VR headsets. So let's sit back, open up a terminal, type in .NET podcast, and let this show begin. So, first thing I want to say, firstly, is it Martin or Martine or Martin? I'm not sure about the pronunciation. I don't ever want to assume, is it Martin?
It's as you want. Honestly, it's fine. It depends if you have a French accent or not, but basically Martin is fine.
Okay, fair enough. Well, welcome to the show, Martin. It's a great pleasure to have you on here. This was an episode we've sort of hastily thrown together. That isn't to say that it's in any way inferior to any of the others. It's just like Martin got in touch with me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, let's totally do this." And then I dropped the ball completely because the whole current situation that's going on. Yeah. We don't like to mention it on the show. I tend to use the term unfortunateness, but we can use the term the situation. That's not a problem. But yeah, I was just wondering, Martin, could you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself for the folks who are listening who maybe don't know much about you?
Right. Thank you for having me, Jamie. So my name is Martin. I'm French, obviously. And I'm 28 years old, and I've been living in Asia for a few years now. I've been .NET and Xamarin developers for the past few years. I blog sometimes, I give talks sometimes, and I teach a bit. And I started working with VideoLAN about a bit over 3 years ago.
Excellent. So yeah, we are going to be talking about LibVLCSharp, which is a wonderful project you've started. But just to give a little bit of background information, VideoLAN or the VLC play. Well, I have a feeling that VLC itself is the client and there's a server portion to it. But I, as a user of VLC, it's a media player on my computer. I play everything through it. That's my entire experience with VLC. I know I can play audio CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, video stream, audio stream. I can do podcasts with it. I can just, I've got a video file on my computer. I just double click. It essentially does everything for me. It's the best abstraction tool I've ever seen. Here's a file. Oh, brilliant! I'll play it. That's it, right? I've even had broken files, like, because I produce this show, I produce a bunch of others. I'll get sent broken audio, and it just plays it. It's brilliant.
Yes. So as you said, there is VLC and VideoLAN. So VLC means VideoLAN client, as you said, which means where is the server, right? So initially, the project was started in the 90s, and there was a client initially and then a server, but a few years later, the server component got merged into VLC, even though it kept its name. So you can still do streaming with the VLC application. So you can sort of use it like a server, but it kept its name VLC. So yeah, like you said, the app was born 1995 was like the foundation of the project, and it got open source in 2001. It was a student project initially. And in 2007, I think, or 2009, the VideoLAN nonprofit was born, which does all kinds of projects, not just VLC, which is the most known one, but X264 as well, and VLMC, and more recently David, which is for the AV1 new video codec. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. It's like the Swiss Army knife of media playback, I think. Like I say, I know that it can do streaming and multiplexing, and there's even built-in support for converting and stuff, but there's so many features that I never use.
Yes, it's like it's mind-blowing the number of things it can do. And I've been working with this project for a few years, and I still discover new features sometimes. The reason it can do so many things is that, and you mentioned also that it can play broken files or files that are like midstream. There is something weird, and it's still gonna try to play it. And the reason it's so good at doing this, and other players cannot, is because initially it was made to be to play streams over the internet. So it's used to having networks falling down, and it wasn't built for local media in the beginning. So it's very reliant.
Sure. And yeah, it's one of the most reliant pieces of software I've ever seen. And I mean, we're talking a lot about VLC VideoLAN, but obviously, right, you've worked on creating this LibVLCSharp. So it is. I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about the relationship between the two? Is it a wrapper around the APIs? Is it how does it all work?
Right. So when people think about VLC, they think about the code and they think about the application, right? What many developers don't know is that the application itself is also available. The core features of the application itself are also available through a library. It's like Git, so you have the Git CLI application where you can manage your repository, but you also have the libgit, which is the dynamic native library of Git, where you can embed Git inside your own application. So it's the same for VLC. You have the VLC application UI CLI, and you have libVLC, which is a native dynamic library, mostly written in C with a bit of C++ and assembly. And it's actually using hundreds of open source libraries, for networking, for all the different codecs and network protocols it supports. So it just abstracts all of this for you and provides a pretty high level C API. Another difference that I want to say about libVLC and VLC projects is that VLC is GPL, while libVLC is LGPL. So if you want to use libVLC, for example, in a closed source proprietary application, you can. That's completely possible. It runs pretty much everywhere, on the Linuxes, Windows, Mac, UWP, iOS, Android, tvOS, Raspberry Pi, ARM64. Yeah.
It really is the sort of universal media playback library, isn't it?
Right. So when I arrived in with VideoLAN, there wasn't much .NET happening, and I saw that the Apple guys had Objective-C and Swift wrapper to be able to call the libVLC C library into their iOS applications. The Android guys had Java GNI bindings, and then there was a C++ binding and everything. And there was initially a C++ CX binding to be able to do the interrupt on the UWP application, but there was no C#. And I thought, well, .NET is very portable. It runs everywhere, and libVLC is also very portable. So I thought there is probably something interesting that can be done here, because the interoperability part of the .NET platform with the platform invocation services and DLL import and all of this is pretty cross-platform thanks to Mono and .NET. So LibVLCSharp is basically a very thin layer of C# that calls into the libVLC public API, interacts with it, and it exposes C# or .NET API, which can be called from F# as well, which is very idiomatic. So you have async await for asynchronous operations. You can dispose of objects that are pointing to a C structure, and so it feels very .NET-y, to use, which was the goal.
Sure. Okay. So we've got this. So that's how LibVLCSharp was sort of created, right? And that's your goal, right? To create this one sort of library that allows you to wrap around that C API, that LibVLC, or is it LibVideoLAN? LibVLC? I forget which one it is.
Yeah.
LibVLC. Okay, yeah. So you've got that one .NET library that sort of wraps around all of that, and I guess because it's .NET code, you can drag it into anything, right? You can, like you said, you can do Xamarin, you can do .NET, you can do Mono, you can do whatever .NET can do, you can run this, right? Because there's that wonderful thing that .NET does about it can load unmanaged code and it can do all of the things that it needs to, right? And that's wonderful. And so let's say I'm building a Xamarin app, right? Let's say, right, I want to build a podcast playing app, right? I've got a keen interest in podcasts.
Sure.
I've got a keen interest in .NET, and I want to learn Xamarin. Let's do this, right? So I can pull in LibVLCSharp and use this tiny amount of it to play MP3s, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then presumably if I want to, because some people are doing MP3, some people are doing videos, I can natively support that. I just hey, do the thing and get me the stream, right?
Exactly. It's just like you just create a media object and you give it a URI, which can be a local file, which can be a remote stream, any format, anything. You just give it to it and then you set it on the media player, you press play and it does its thing. Wow, so yeah, it's very simple. There is a few lines of code on the README where you can see like code that initialize, which just loads the native library. Then you create a LibVLC object, then a media object, then a media player object, and then you press play, pretty much.
Fantastic. I love that. I love how we can make things that are super simple to use, as a, because we're all developers, right? And there's that wonderful quote by Bill Gates who said, the best developers are the lazy developers. And, if I could pull a library in and write 5 lines of code and it solves the problem for me, fantastic. Because then all that complexity, all that business logic-y stuff is handled by someone else, right? And that's what's great about that. I love that. And like you said, that's kind of the point of this of LibVLCSharp. It's like let's let that do the difficult part of figuring out the media file format and the codecs, and it does all of that stuff and just presumably returns me a stream, or like you say, you have a media player and I just hook that up to the UI somehow, and it just all magically works.
Exactly. Speaking of streams, you can even if you have your own stream, you can also provide it to LibVLC. It doesn't have to be a URI. Otherwise, it's going to do the file access on the network access itself. But if you want to provide it with a .NET stream, any kind of .NET stream, that's also supported.
Oh, cool. So I've got some kind of binary stream coming in with some audio data, and I just say, hey, here's the stream. Do the thing, right?
Yes.
I love it. Okay. So let's go with Dark Horse, right? We've talked about Unity. We talked about, I almost gave the game away then. We talked about Xamarin, right? I've built this Xamarin app. I've got a UWP app that can do the same thing. Let's just pretend. And I've got a desktop app that's running UWP. It's playing some videos and stuff. And then I go, I know. I'm making a video game. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could play some kind of media inside the video game? Or I'm using, or maybe I'm using Unity to create some kind of some VR experience, and I want to play a video or play some media, right? I know that Unity supports .NET. I know that LibVLC LibVLCSharp is .NET.
Yes.
Is there a crossover there? Is that, can I just drag and drop and it just works?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm gonna explain a bit more how it works, but yes, we started working on the Unity support. So we got Windows working, and you can install it directly from the Unity store. But it's also open source, so if you want to build it yourself, you can. And we have an Android prototype almost working. There is just one last issue in LibVLC, but it was working in the past and we'll get it working soon. So how does LibVLCSharp works in Unity? There's basically three components to understand. The first one is, of course, you have to have a LibVLC build, but not any LibVLC build. The current LibVLC version that I ship on NuGet is version 3, because that's a stable version of LibVLC and also of the VLC app, version 3. But for Unity, we use LibVLC 4. So those are preview bleeding edge builds. And why we use them? We use them because there is a new API in LibVLC 4, which allows to have GPU decoding of external textures. So if you want to have like direct 3D or OpenGL rendering to have hardware acceleration through LibVLC playback, then you need to use LibVLC 4, which got this new pretty low-level API added. So that's the first component. Second component, you need the LibVLCSharp build. Unity currently only supports net standard 2.0 target frameworks. So you need that. And then there is a small C++ plugin that binds them together. It talks with Unity. When you create a native Unity plugin, you have access to some components of Unity, notably Direct3D 11 components, and so it does some interoperability with the Unity world and with the libVLC world. So that's a necessary missing piece. It could also be written in C#, but we chose to write it in C++ for now, to have notably a better performance interoperability, because it's a hot loop. Every frame has to come really quickly, and you do interoperability between C++ and C right now, which is faster than with C#.
Right, I see. I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, unmanaged code is, until we get to some kind of supercomputer usage, unmanaged code is always going to be slightly faster than managed code, right? And
until .NET 6, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah.
One or the other.
Absolutely. And, we're saying this on the several hours before .NET 5 is officially launched, which kind of dates the episode, but that's fine.
Yes.
Because of the podcast, what I call the podcast time machine wibbly wobbliness, we're recording this a couple of hours ahead of .NET 5 being announced at .NET Conf 2020, but it's likely not going to go out until early 2021. We're looking at April for a release date for this, just so that people who are listening in the future are going, but .NET 5 is superior to C++. Well, that's because that's happening as we're recording in the future, but for you, the listener, in the past.
Sure.
Excellent. Okay. So then, so I can take a couple of, at the moment there's a couple of moving parts required. I take these the experimental nightly super duper amazing build of LibVLC. I take the build of LibVLCSharp, which matches that, and I take the C++ plugin. I do some wiring up, and I have media playback within Unity.
Yes.
So that's awesome. But again, I'm saying media playback, right? Like I said at the beginning, LibVLC does so much more than just media playback. So let's say I want to watch some kind of video that's being streamed to me on my headset, and I want to look around. I know that there's some support. We can maybe talk about it a little bit later, but there's support for a thing called 3D video. Is that
That's
where I can sort of turn my head and see different parts of
definitely.
like.
Yes. So in the Unity package, actually there are a couple sample scenes to get you started, where you just double click, press play, and then you have something working. One of them that I did a few months ago is a 360 playback sample. So I used the Unity keyboard events and 360 video, which is it was recorded with a video camera set on an eagle, and then the eagle just flew around, and the camera is like 360. So during the playback, you can use your keyboard arrow keys and navigate 360 around the eagle that's flying, basically.
Wow. That's amazing. I love the future. I absolutely love it. That is amazing. And there I am. I'm creating business line CRUD apps that take this data from a form, store it in the database, pull the data back from the form, and you're doing all the really fun stuff.
I'm sharing.
Okay, so you're sharing the fun stuff. There you go.
Yes.
Okay. So there's all sorts of loads of really wonderful things that you can do with it. So we talked about how you can do Unity stuff, but what are some of we're sort of jumping around but that's fine. For the context for the listeners, I send over a document with a whole bunch of I'd like to talk about these things, but if we meander off, then that's totally fine. I'm interested to know. We'll come back to LibVLCSharp as a project in a moment,
sure,
because we talked about the different demo projects that you can do.
Sure.
Do you know of any really what are your favorite projects that you've seen? You've gone, oh wow, that is really cool. What are some of those? Because obviously we've said so far that you just bring this library in and you have access to unlimited things, right?
Right.
So, but that's maybe not as interesting to some people when they go, yeah, but what can I actually do?
Right. I discovered a new one very recently. I got in touch with the maintainer. It's an open source project. It's called Race Control. And so the maintainer is a Formula One fan, and he really loves watching races. And he told me that he reverse engineered the web API of the Formula One platform so he could get access to the live stream. I think you have to have a paid subscription to do so, but he probably wasn't satisfied with that player and he wanted to have access to all kinds of channels and stuff. So he coded an open source player, which you can find on GitHub. And he actually reported an issue with audio tracks switching in VLC and LibVLC. And he told me to reproduce, you need to have a VPN that goes through the Netherlands, because my subscription is Dutch, so they do geo restrictions. So I need a VPN that goes through like Amsterdam or something, and it's only on live streams. So the race is at 2 p.m. Amsterdam time on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you have an hour and a half during which you can reproduce. Yeah. But it looks like a pretty fun project, and it's some parts of there is a screenshots. There are two screenshots on the README of the project at the bottom, and the playback view looks kinda similar to the VLC UI in some way, which will change in the VLC UI will change in the next version. So yes, this one
that's really cool,
really complete.
Yeah. So just to confirm, then, to be able to use that, you need a valid F1 TV subscription, right?
I'm afraid so.
just in case anyone listening is like, wow, I don't need to pay and now I can use this open source app. That's totally not how that works, right? You do need to provide your own credentials. So that's,
Yes.
that's cool. I was just a little bit worried about that in case the F1 lawyers come and knock it about.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I always like to confirm things like that, just because you don't want people to take things out of context, do you?
No, for sure.
Excellent. Okay, that's really cool. I'll put a link to this in the show notes because and like you say, if I scroll down into the README, it looks very much like, not exactly like, but very much like VLC.
Rolling. Action in 3, 2, 1.
No one calls me these days. Oh, hey, what host, Squitch?
Have you finished that big new feature for the website yet?
Absolutely.
Hang on. Oh, that's not bad. It loads pretty quickly. There's every episode on it as well.
X.
What's this button all about?
Don't push that button.
That ain't gonna happen.
No!
Nothing happened.
That's what you think. Waffling Taylors is a podcast all about video games and nonsense. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts, or head over to wafflingtaylors.rocks. So if you want to hear more from my brother, who may or may not be a cartoon wolf, and myself about video games and silliness, head over to wafflingtaylors.rocks, or look for us wherever you listen to audio.
And don't forget that we have tons of guests and that we've covered over 1,300 games on our show so far.
And that we have over 110 episodes to choose from, too.
Wafflingtaylors.rocks.
Cut. Print.
Was that okay, Russell?
It was sufficient. Editing now.
Oh, hey, it says, so there's a button that says Chromecast. Is that something that LibVLCSharp can do, or is that something that they've added themselves?
No, it is. It is. Chromecast support arrived in the version 3. And it's a very fun, feature, I think, because you can just stream anything you want on your TV, be it music or movies. But there are two interesting things, specifically having to do with the Chromecast support. The first thing has to do with the legal side. So VLC cannot use a proprietary code, right? And the Chromecast SDK from Google is not open source. So technically, VLC cannot use it. So what the VLC core developers did is that they reverse engineered the Chromecast SDK to somehow build their own. And that was, pretty good feat, I think. But there was some kind of limitation in a way, not in their SDK, but in how the Chromecast works. Chromecast only supports a few codecs, right? Like H.264, most known ones. But VLC doesn't, right? It supports more codecs. So let's say someone wants to play a DivX, for example, and so they start it in VLC, it's working as expected, and then they see a Chromecast feature, and they want to cast it to their Chromecast, then it's not going to work, right? Because the Chromecast doesn't support it. So, knowing that, VLC developers implemented a way to do transcoding in real time, so that if the media that you want to play is not natively supported by the Chromecast, then VLC will transcode it in real time while it's being played, so that you can cast your DVD to your Chromecast if you want to.
That's amazing. I do have to say that transcoding audio and video, like you say, in real time is, it's not a trivial thing to do.
Especially on mobile devices, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's amazing. I do have a couple of friends who have projects that are similar to that. And they were always talking about how, I need to get more RAM, or I need to rebuild my computer because it can't transcode this media format to that media format because, I've got all my super ultra HD content and I can't watch it on my TV because it doesn't support it, and because the transcoding is too much heavy lifting at the time. And so what I'm trying to get at there is transcoding any kind of media is not easy. And like you say, especially on a mobile phone, right? Most mobile devices, mobile phones, tablets have ARM chips, and they aren't really designed for heavy media, heavy lifting with media. So being able to do that in real time is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. So I could throw together something using .NET that uses some kind of UI. I have a collection of media, and I go, right, play that on my Chromecast, or maybe perhaps can I stream to another device on the network that's not just a Chromecast? So I have another device that's running something, and I say, hey, stream over there, right? Is that possible?
Right. I think we had Google Summer of Code students that worked on AirPlay support. I'm not sure what's the status of this, but that was in the works at least at some point. And if you have a UPnP or a NAS device, that's not. I mean, you can read from it. I don't think you can stream from it, but to it. But you can play from it. Yes.
Cool. Okay. So there's a little support there. That's pretty cool. So what about, so you've said earlier on that Videoland, the project started, it got open sourced, and then they created this not-for-profit organization. Is it not-for-profit, did you say?
It is.
So does that mean that, if you wanted to commercialize LibVLCSharp, is that something you can do if you wanted to? Because I'm not 100% au fait with all of the many, many different software licenses that are around, right?
Me neither.
So if you, right. So if you wanted to, so does that leave you in a strange position if you and the other collaborators say, hey, let's commercialize this because it's using some other, you said LGPL, right?
Right. So it's dual licensed. So we do offer a commercial license, and that's handled by the commercial arm of VLC, which is called Video Labs, which is a for-profit company which does all kinds of support, customizing. I'm missing the word here, but consulting is the word I'm looking for.
Sure.
So Video Labs does all kinds of support, customizing, and consulting around VLC and LibVLC. But all of the projects are still open source and can be used from proprietary applications without any issue. So yes, that's a French non-profit. Videoland is a French non-profit, and Video Labs is the commercial arm. So yeah, no problem there.
Okay, cool. Okay. So I saw that when I was clicking around and doing some research,
yes,
in preparation for the episode, you have a book for LibVLCSharp in Unity. Is that what's that all about? Is that just getting started?
Yeah, I don't have a book yet, but I'm writing it.
Right, okay. Right.
Yes, I'm writing it. It's about Videoland, about VLC, and about LibVLCSharp specifically. Yes, definitely.
Sure. Okay.
I'm still writing it, but I'm hoping to release it in a few months. Yes.
Cool. Okay. So what's the target audience for that? Is that I want to implement some feature that LibVLCSharp provides in my Unity app, or is it just a case of, hey, there's this other thing you can do, come check this out? What's the... Right.
So it's not specifically on Unity. It's really any .NET project. So who might be interested? .NET developers that need to build multimedia applications, for example. Other developers that would like to use LibVLC with any language, because there is one part that is specifically on LibVLC, and since LibVLC is the same everywhere, on every platforms, no matter which language you're going to use, it might be a few different APIs because of the wrapper how it exposes things in your target language, but the core features are the same. So these parts will be relevant also for not .NET developers.
Okay, so it's developers of all kinds and shades and sizes and all sorts, all kinds of languages, all kinds of whatever,
Yes.
all kinds of frameworks, as long as they're interested in media playback and all of the millions of different features that libVLC and libVLCSharp can support.
Pretty much.
Right, I see. Okay. All right. So we talked about race control. Do you know of any others? Any other interesting projects that are built with libVLCSharp?
Yes. This one is called Lively, I believe. And it's a live wallpaper app. So you can get interactive desktop wallpapers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it has a README with a few images where you can see what it can do. And this I've talked with the maintainer of this project as well, and he mentioned he was interested in Avalonia support because he was planning to port this application to Linux, and he was planning to use Avalonia. So we're about to ship Avalonia support in VLC soon.
Oh, cool. Okay. That to me is really interesting. I can, because I was looking through the examples just now whilst you were talking, and it's like, hey, you can have these, images, maybe a GIF or a GIF, a moving image as your background. You can have a video as your background, and then right at the bottom of the README is like, oh, also you can use emulators. So if you want to play, you want to have a video game playing as your desktop wallpaper. And, as someone who is very into video games, I do a few other podcasts, and one of them is a video game podcast. And I'm like, oh, here we go. This is, now you're talking my language.
Right.
I have to show this to my co-host, who is a Windows user. And until the Avalonia support is built in, he may be able to use this and just have some video game as his desktop wallpaper. Yeah. I think he'd be quite excited about that.
Definitely. You can, another that not so known feature of libVLC is that you can actually record your screen.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what you're saying
you can cast it to the Chromecast as well.
Right. Okay. So you see, I do know a lot of people who do video training stuff for software, and they tend to use OBS, the Open Broadcasting System, and just do record locally, which is fair enough if that works. Yes. But hey, if libVLC supports it, then that must mean that libVLCSharp supports it, which means I could throw together an app that goes, right, okay, record my screen. Right, I'm going to do some things and then hit stop, and out pops a video of some kind, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, excellent. Okay. You see, I'm learning so much more about libVLC and what VideoLAN supports. And what libVLCSharp supports just by talking to you. It's amazing. Okay. So we talked about all of that. What about? So we hinted at it a little bit when we talked about the F1 viewer app, the race control app. So technically, since libVLCSharp exists and that helps to bind to the libVLC library, I could totally re-implement VLC in .NET, couldn't I?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, assuming that they're like Avalonia or some other cross-platform UI system, GTK, something like that. I could totally just, whatever, build my own VLC.
Yes, completely. So the VLC app currently is Qt. I don't know how do you say that, but yeah, Qt, the Qt framework, which is a cross-platform framework, and it's used for the Linux and the Windows application. For the macOS application, it's a Cocoa-based app. So yes, you could definitely create a new .NET-based app using, Avalonia, or just like regular WPF, and build your own clone of VLC. Yes, definitely.
Ha, you see, this is what I mean, right? This is why I love talking to other developers to find out what they're working on. Because now I'm like, do you know what? I might just spend some time. Because like when I'm looking for when a new technology comes out and I'm looking for a project to, how do I use this new technology, right?
Right.
You look at the documentation and let's say you go with, I don't want to pick on anything, but let's say Angular, right? There's the Angular Heroes thing, and it's like, create a hello world. And I'm like, that's fine. But I'm elbow deep into a project and I need to create a UI. Hello world isn't going to help me.
No.
But if let's say I want to learn, so you've said that LibVLCSharp is quite literally a case of here's a bunch of code, 5, 6, 7 lines, and you've got your player going,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
If it's that simple, and I want to learn some UI technology, well, why not use the code that I already know works, a file that I know already works in the code because the code can handle any file, and let's explore the intricacies of building this user interface rather than creating a to-do app. Maybe we can make LibVLCSharp the new to-do app that everybody starts with
Sure.
when they're building anything, right?
I'm down with that. That's okay with me.
Excellent. Let's do this. Maybe that's what I need to do, because I still want to pick up. I still want to explore Uno and Avalonia and a bunch of the other UI frameworks. So why don't I do this? Right? Let's do this.
Sure.
Excellent. Okay. So you've talked about with LibVLCSharp, it's a couple of lines of code, and I've got media playback from wherever. I've got perhaps a few more lines of code, and I can record my screen.
Yes.
I've got there's these wonderful people who've done some things like let's watch the F1 stuff, and I saw some buttons there that I'm not sure. Like share the stream, copy the stream, download the stream. I don't know whether F1 TV allows you to do that, but if that's a button that they've enabled, that's a button that developer has chosen to enable. But that's fine. You can have like live wallpapers. Well, have you got like maybe one or two other examples that you can share of people going, "Hey, let's do this thing"?
Yes, I've written a small sample. So I have a Git repository that is called LibVLCSharp samples, where there are a few minimal samples. I really like to have samples that are complete but very minimal. So the least amount of code to perform a given specific task is how I like to write samples, not to have like all kinds of unnecessary code, just really focused. And one of them is called LVST. It's a small CLI app I wrote earlier this year. And it basically uses monotorrent. So monotorrent is a libtorrent implementation, but in C#. So it's not a C# binding over a native library. It's an actual C# full implementation of the torrent client libraries. So it allows you to connect to torrents and consume them. And a newish API that was added in the monotorrent code was to give you a stream that was just like a stream of your torrents that you're consuming, but it was never ending, right? Because you're constantly getting it until it's finished, I guess, and until you're only seeding. So I found a media that is free to use, so no pirating here, and I hooked it up. I hooked the stream from monotorrent to LibVLCSharp, so that when you start the app, monotorrent starts. It starts receiving packets and pieces of your torrent, and when you have enough, VLC starts playing in real time while getting the stream. And if you add the C flag to the command line, you can also send that to the Chromecast in real time.
I see. So I can imagine that I have. Okay, let's say we've all seen these things, right? This is why I love talking to creators such as yourself, because I'm starting to have ideas, right? I've seen in the world, the big screens they have at for kiosks and information desks and things that are constantly playing video, right?
Yes.
Most of the time, that is a video player with maybe a playlist that it's running through. The media is stored locally on that device. Right. Let's say I have 100 of those to manage, and I want them all to play the same content. Well, the trivial answer is take a USB, copy the content onto every single device, and set them playing, which is brilliant. But when they crash, I need to go to that machine. Maybe some overflow happened, or maybe some update happened, or whatever. I then need to manually reboot that machine or restart the media playback to get it working. What about if I had a central server that had a collection of all of my content that I want to display on each screen, and all I do is I create an individual torrent file or a playlist file with each of those videos for those specific screens. I go to that screen, I run this app, boom, there's my content constantly playing on that machine, right? And then if the machine crashes, I just have to reboot the machine, and I could do that remotely. I don't need to go up and plug in a USB, right?
Yes. Definitely.
And then it can be an incredibly thin client that just runs the screen. Something maybe like a Raspberry Pi Zero, I guess, as long as it can support the video codec, or a screen with a Chromecast plugged in. And it's super low tech, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen a whole bunch of these that have crashed in the public. And, you'll see the people who work there are like, we don't know how it works. We don't know what to do. So we've got to wait for the engineer to come in. Whereas something like this, if you have a torrent on some server that you own, you could likely just stream directly to it.
Yeah.
I like it. Such a great idea. And like you say, it's using a public domain film.
That was the word I was looking for. Yes. And I focused on making this one as small as possible. So if you look at the number of lines of code, I think it's like 145, counting the uses 12 lines of usings. So it's really small.
Yeah.
And it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, of course.
Excellent. Media playback via a torrent file of any media playback, and then transcoding over to Chromecast, regardless of your operating system. This is what I love about the future. This is it. Excellent. Okay, so we talked about LibVLCSharp a little bit, but it's not just you, is it? I mean, I'm not trying to reduce the amount of work that you're doing, but it's not just you who's working on this, right?
Of course.
So
there are a few contributors, and there is a small community around it that is starting to get bigger and bigger. We have a small Discord server with about 200 people in it now, with all LibVLC bindings and all LibVLC users. So there are .NET people, but there are also like the Java maintainer of the VLCJ, which is the Java binding. And there is VLC Kit, which is Objective-C Swift binding. So yeah, we have a small community around LibVLC, all bindings included, and for LibVLCSharp. We have contributors that are reviewing pull requests. The support was mostly done by Stéphane Mickermit, which is another French guy. And I just got a pull request recently for the Avalonia support, actually, which I reviewed today. So yes, it's definitely not just me.
Excellent. I like that. When I'm looking at some kind of open source project to poke at and try, I always like to know that there's, it's not something that's been abandoned, or it's not just a one person thing, right? I don't mind using a project that is one person, but then I wonder, like, what happens if that person decides I want to move on, or
sure,
or what if they decide that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna abandon this, or
which is the right, which is the right. But yeah,
of course.
Definitely.
Or what if And it's terrible to say this, but what if they pass on, right?
Right.
Then what happens?
Yeah.
I mean, there's more things to worry about than my project is using this open source, but you know what I mean? What happens then? But having a healthy community around something really helps, because then, of course, you can presumably, if I wanted to, I could join the community and maybe ask for help.
Of course. I mean, so there is a Discord server. Just come, join, and ask your question. Someone will reply. No problem.
Excellent. See, that's what I really like. You see, you need to be able to have that help and support should you get stuck. But from the sounds of things, getting started, you probably won't get stuck.
I hope not, but let me know if you do.
Excellent. Okay. So what about, what's the best place to go to find out all about LibVLCSharp? Let's say someone's listened to this and gone, I've had this fantastic idea. I'm going to go build my app. I want to get started with LibVLCSharp. How do I get started? Where do I go? What's the best place?
I would say the Git repository and the Discord server. The Git repository contains the documentation where you have sample apps where you can just clone, build, run, and you can just start from something that's already working. Then there are community projects which are also linked inside the documentation. And the Discord server, if you want to chat with people and ask questions, if you have questions about contributing or documentation or just if something is supported or not, then the Discord is also a place.
Okay, excellent. What about catching up with you then? I saw, obviously we connected over Twitter, but is that a place that you talk about the progress of LibVLCSharp, or is it a better place to go? And okay.
No,
sure.
mostly Twitter. I'm not always active, but when there is an interesting update or something, I will usually send out a tweet. Yes.
Okay, excellent. And I can see as well that you do have a blog. Is that something that you're doing a lot more? Because obviously I can appreciate you got LibVLCSharp that I know about because we've talked about it. You got this idea of you got the book coming, you got Twitter, you've got the blog. Do you have time to update the blog? Is this something that you do occasionally, or is it just like it's there? It's been sat there for a year. I'm going to come back to it because I've done that. If I'm honest, there's something out there that I will come back to eventually.
Right. So I've actually looked at it recently, and I think I did about 3 or 4 articles per year for the past 3 years. So that's not that much, but some activity. Sure.
So there's some content there if people want to go check it out and learn a little bit more. Excellent. Okay. Well, I guess, I mean, that's essentially all the things that I've got written down that I'd like to ask you about. So we've got links for LibVLCSharp. They'll be in the show notes. We've got links for, I'll have to see if I can get a link for the Discord, if that's okay, so people can join in if they want to.
Yes.
And I guess LibVLCSharp is available on NuGet, right? So I just do .NET new or .NET add package and we're done, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much, Martin. It's been fantastic talking to you. I realize that it's your evening, my morning, but that's how time zones work. That's
exactly. Thank you so much for having me. It was very nice meeting you and talking with you.
Excellent. It was really nice talking to you too. Thank you ever so much.
See you. Bye.
That was my interview with Martin Finkel about LibVLCSharp. Be sure to check the show notes for a bunch of links to some of the stuff that we covered and a full transcription of the interview. The show notes, as always, can be found at .netcore.show, and there will be a link directly to them in your podcatcher. And don't forget to spread the word. Leave me a rating or review on your podcatcher of choice. Head over to .netcore.show/subscribe for ways to do that, and to come back next time for more .NET Core goodness. I'll see you again real soon. See you later, folks. The .NET Core podcast is a production of RJJ Software Limited.